And we're with Skewed shortly before we start with the Mid-Season Madness. Of course, you guys qualified for the event relatively decisively, I would think. Did you think that only really O2 would give you struggle? Did you have them as like the strongest team in your part of the bracket?
Out of the whole contenders, I do think that O2 is the strongest, and they can possibly win scrims over like the league team and maybe the tournament as well. I was expecting at least 3-0 or even 3-1, but there were a map where we did not prepare enough of, and that is why the game got elongated and the outcome was 3-2.
Makes sense, yeah. Now, we also, of course, want to talk to you about you and your teammates. And you made a pretty big career transition. You came from the Gladiators, of course, and then transitioned into a starting role, which wasn't always the case for you, even though, of course, in some metas you were. Was that something that you wanted for your career? And why did you choose the Infernal to do it with?
So there were a couple of offers from different teams. And Seoul Infernal, they actually gave me the impression that they really wanted me. And I have chosen Seoul Infernal for my career, but also at the same time, I wanted to be at a place where the team is actually in need of me, whether that is being like optional in a bench player or even a starter. So I came to Infernal, and as I thought I would be able to perform well, even if our team does not win the championship.
Was going back to Korea a consideration for you? And did you have offers from NA?
Yeah, that was actually the main reason why I chose Seoul Infernal, as I'm from Korea and Korea is my hometown, so that was the main reason.
Sweet. Now, let's talk a little bit about the rest of your team and, of course, like your support mate. I think, at least in the West, there were some criticisms towards MatchFiXa's performance last season. This season, he looks much improved. Why do you think that is, and how do you guys work together, and what's the synergy like?
So I knew that FIXA would improve much more than last year compared to last year. The team probably thought that too as well. I think that flex support is basically a main healer with good mechanics. So I knew that it wouldn't be hard for him as he has great mechanics. And to be better to sync in, we have seen a lot of first point of view videos of each other to sync in to make our backline stronger.
Sweet. Now, another big talking point, at least for us in the West, is that Baek seems to have finally arrived. We talked a lot about him as like a Rookie of the Year candidate in the year he came in. Then for 2 years, every once in a while you saw it, but he never really seemed to crack the code. Now he's suddenly arrived. He looks like the best tank maybe in APAC at least. How do you guys would describe him as a player, and how is he as a person for your team?
Mag is very desperate. He wants to win, and he is a player who is always looking to strive for the better. And I think that he came to Seoul Infernal to prove that he is ready to show what he's capable of. And we are prospering at a faster pace because of him, due to his desperate emotions coming in. He is definitely a player who tries to maximize his value to master everything and bring in the values for the team as well.
For sure. Now, watching you guys, especially when one has predicted you guys to win, is frustrating at times. So you have this quality that we call anti-clutch. And it's basically like, I'm thinking of the one example in the first match against the Seoul Dynasty. It's 2-2. It's the last submap. You kill Profit. It's a 4v5. And somehow that team fight still is lost. Why do you think that happens sometimes with your team, that it just looks anti-clutch?
The situation you mentioned shouldn't happen, but it is possible that it can. And I think that for that situation, when it was our turn to attack, we were too defensive, and that led to more chances for the Seoul Dynasty. And the problem with that was we couldn't keep up with the strategy that we prepared with the coaches, and we had the land frustrations, and we are constantly in talks to overcome how to not do anti-crutch. So yeah.
Sure. Now, what is the team like outside the game? Do you have like an atmosphere that feels like familiar, or is it very professional? What's the team atmosphere like?
So Seoul Infernal, we have very good team atmosphere, and because our team consists of all Koreans, we can easily resolve any complaints or any crush that we have. We could always have sit downs and talk it through, and that is why we have such a good relationship with everyone.
Sweet. Now, we also want to talk a little bit with your personal career development, because for Gladiators, I think everyone recognized that you had an incredible brigade. A lot of people said it might have been the best. Also, your Zenyatta was great. Now, this year, you showed your flexibility, and you also showed an Ana and a Baptiste. So, is that something that you always had, or did you have to develop it specifically for this season?
I think after Overwatch 2 launched, think more that all the positions require to be very flexible, and especially with healer position, they at least should be able to play all support heroes. And I know I played a lot of Ana and Baptiste, and Baptiste is actually one of my Baptiste is actually a hero that I was always confident to play. And last year I didn't play much of Ana, but I did watch first POVs of other players, and I asked around to Shu, and I learned a lot from him.
Is Shu the player you studied the most, or are the other Ana players that you studied?
I think I have learned much more from Shu, as he gave me advices and as well as know-hows of how to play Ana well.
Now, it feels like the story that you went through is one that happens to a lot of players right now. So there's a player that has a very good niche pick. In your case, Baek and Zenyatta, and plays behind a top-tier starter, in your case, Shu. I think that also happens in some other teams. So, for instance, we saw Fearless and Hanbin separated, and they're both flourishing at least to a certain degree. Of course, for Fearless more so. When Smurf stepped out of the shadow, maybe a little bit of Super, he also could cover the entire tank pool. And the same seems to be true with you and Shu. So, is there something like, if you're really good in the Overwatch League at one or two heroes, that probably also means you could be good at all the heroes in that respective role?
I think I said it before, but I believe that you need to be flexible in every position, and I think the players are probably aware of this as well. And I believe that if you have good mechanics, then you will have a more diverse hero pool than someone who does not have good mechanics. So other players might think that they have limitations on hero pools, but as the meta changes and they were to play other heroes, then they would all play well. I believe that
Makes sense, yeah. Do you know that a lot of Western fans consider you on their shortlist for MVP, and what do you think about that?
I really didn't know that Western fans thought of me as an MVP candidate, and it is definitely a great pleasure to be on the list of candidates for the MVP, as it is only given to players who are recognized to play very well. And this season is not over yet, so I am going to aim strive so I could be one of the candidates for the VIP until the end of season. And my top priority is actually for my team, Seoul Infernal, to win and lock up a good result. And then whether it is being MVP or being the candidate, it would just come along with the result.
Are you satisfied with your own personal performance so far?
My performance, I'm not actually satisfied with. I could strive for the better, and I could be better.
Do you have a particular area you want to improve in?
I could definitely work on my mechanics, but I want to improve as a team, communication-wise, and playing as a team is my goal to improve.
Makes sense. Now, statistically, you've been an outlier this season. I think Winston Slap has you as the number one ranked player so far. It shows in your Ana. It's incredibly lethal. Like in comparison to others in the APAC region, you get 25% more teams of your team's kills, and you're still more safe than other supports. You die less, and also die less in first position. So, have you made an effort to be offensively minded?
I think I play aggressive enough. And it is important for healers to play aggressive and defensive depending on the situation. And it is all about the flexibility and also talking with the team. Um, Coordinating the play style with backline, it kind of leads me to be safe and have less deaths. I think that's why the numbers shows actually reflects that.
Makes sense. Now, it's even more impressive on Zenyatta and Baptiste. So, of course, just to explain the stat, of course, death per 10 is also sort of an achievement for your team because as everyone else dies less and you win more team fights, of course, you're expected to die less as well. Still, you die less, 50% less on Zenyatta than the average APAC flex support and 24% less per 10 on Baptiste. How do you stay alive as a support in Overwatch 2?
As a support, it is important to be alive, and that is why I pay attention to the amount of death. I think most everyone says that healer heals themselves, but it's actually something that all team members have to help, and my team knows that very well, and that's why opponent team they have hard time focusing on me, and that leads to less deaths, and that's the key to staying alive.
Sweet. Now, of course, we want to talk a little bit about the mid-season madness. And the NA region has been slandering the APAC region to a large degree when we talk to them in interviews and say that the APAC region is the weaker one. Do you agree? And do you think that teams like Atlanta and Houston are probably the favorites?
Of course, I have played both West and the East, and I do completely agree with that. APAC is weaker, and it is not weaker because of how the team is built and roster, but it's because of the situations of how APAC we just consist of less teams, and that results in less practice and being exposed to different comps as well. And I believe that we can compete against any of the NA teams and win. And our team is competitive and strong enough to win over Atlanta and Houston.
As you said, you played in both regions. Is there anything that is noticeably different, maybe about practice, maybe about how things are done specifically, or is it really just, the quality of practice that you get based on the teams that are in the region?
The biggest difference in the practice is the practice environment. In the West region, there are many teams, and that leads to various comps, and they can easily adapt to different meta. And APAC, it's a little different because we have smaller number of teams. For example, if APAC have 6 teams and they are to compete against 2 teams in a week, then it leads to screen 4 teams. And the data is just too scarce to understand and analyze the meta. That's why I think a lot of APAC's team will just have to watch the Western teams to figure out the play style. So the practice environment is the biggest difference.
Yeah, when we interviewed someone, that's pretty much what he said. I think he likes to watch the APAC region and looks at how teams play. And he specifically said that you guys seem to be the one detail-oriented team, that gets a lot of the little things right. And that you, just the team, if you were playing internationally, you could be much more competitive. Do you have a comment to that? Do you think that's just true?
I also think the same. I agree. As I mentioned before, the more practice you get, the more data you gain, so you could improve and you get feedbacks and improve on. That will allow the team to be more detail oriented and to show high standards of performance in our play.
Sweet. Now, it seemed like you had a pretty slow start to the season in terms of playing against the Seoul Dynasty. And one of the reasons why you guys said that this match, that in hindsight, I mean, the Seoul Dynasty seemed to be struggling, and you guys won all matches after, it seems like you should have also won that one, but maybe it was a little bit different because you played on LAN. Are you concerned that these LAN jitters are happening again at midseason madness?
I think things can definitely happen to any teams in their first LAN, but I don't think I or the team members would have any anxiety of offline matches anymore because we gained our confidence back by winning our second offline match against Dallas by 3-0, and I actually look forward to have LAN matches.
Makes sense. Will you try to scrim Western teams as much as possible for the reasons that we talked about before, just getting quality practice? And is there anything scheduled that you know of?
Definitely, we need to practice a lot and schedule scrims with any teams. And because there are no teams actually looking for scrims here, it's just Hangzhou right now. We have scrims with NA teams, and I'm going to always show my best at every practice scrim that we have.
Sweet. Then as a last question, and I know it's in the heart of the competitor to always say we are the favorites, but if you couldn't say your own team, who do you think is the favorites for this tournament?
I'm going to say Houston, if I'm not able to say my own team. If we don't do well, I'd rather see Hugh win, so I picked Houston.
Why Houston?
왜 휴스턴이에요? 슈 선수가 있어서?
네, 그냥 슛 선수 있어서.
Houston because Hugh's in Houston.
Of course, makes sense. Then we thank you for the interview and best of luck in the tournament.